Go.
Hit it.
Hey, welcome to Scotch for Dummies tonight. We are going off script. We're going to be talking about what? Irish whiskey. Why are we going to talk about Irish whiskey? Because we can, and because yesterday was St. Patrick's Day, and we thought it would be really interesting to talk about the differences and similarities between Scotch and Irish whiskey. And little hint, there's more than just the spelling. Actually, if you stick around for the end of the show, we're going to give away a little special Irish whiskey, so don't miss out on that. Drew, take us home. Hey.
Welcome to the show, everybody. So normally we take the first 10 minutes or so, sometimes longer, to greet everybody and just kind of go through some things. But we're going to keep things rolling tonight and get straight into our topic. Stay tuned for the end. We're going to do our little giveaway. But until then, we're going to go through a brief history of the other whiskey.
There's
Right?
more than one whiskey?
What?
It's actually the original whiskey.
It
How about
actually
that?
is
The other UK whiskey.
Is this where it all started?
I think so, like 1300s or something. That's what I heard.
Way back in the day. You know what's awesome?
Dinosaurs were around.
They didn't want to share that either.
Still don't.
But this is also a good thing that came from that region, which you were drinking, and I'm getting ready to partake in another one.
Happy Thursday, gentlemen.
Happy
Let's
Thursday.
start this off right. All right.
Cheers.
Well,
that way.
multitasking.
Meanwhile,
I like that.
Sean and I are drinking Ishkabaha,
What is Ishkabaha?
What in the world?
Aquavite,
Aquavite?
Water of life.
water of life.
Water of
Water of life. So, how did this all get started? How did
When
we end
did
up
it-
in this basement?
Yeah, actually, we wouldn't be here if it didn't start back then, right?
Yeah, we started with Scotch, but apparently Irishes were going on before that.
You think? A wee bit? Back in the 1300s, I think?
Yeah, like mid 1300s, I think was the first recorded mention. There was a chieftain that died, and they mentioned him having a dram, basically, when they were talking about him passing
I don't
away.
think the
So-
stills were quite as industrialized.
No, I don't think they were, like, that might have killed you, maybe made you blind,
So
but that just makes you
yeah,
tougher.
now they did have
Might have vaccinated you.
they did have stills way before that. So they were distilling like medicinal things and
So this started with the
herbs and
priests.
spices. Yes, essentially, yeah.
Priests and friars, they were
Monks.
distilling out herbal remedies and just
Essential
kind of
oils
yeah,
and those kinds of things,
experimenting with that stuff. And then they realized that you could also get drunk on that, and
Oh,
that's
very
a
good
great
stuff.
experiment.
That's a nice,
Makes
that's a
me
nice
feel
pleasant twist.
But before we fast forward into the later days or more current times, what happens with whiskey in Ireland, right? You said something about them taxing it way before anybody
Yeah,
else.
yeah.
I mean, not
Gotta
only
get your money.
that's exactly what I'm saying. Now we got this good juice. Well, we gotta make some money out of it, right?
Well, and that kind of happened throughout the world. Like, there's a lot of illicit distilling. It happened in the United States. There's Whiskey Rebellion, and so there's a lot of history repeating itself in the whiskey world.
Taxation, baby.
Government wants their cut. They realize that it is a way for people to make money, and they want to regulate it, and they want to make sure that they get their share. So, Irish whiskey was no exception, and long back in the day, they started taxing, and the taxing process was based off the amount of malted barley that you were using in your distillate.
Yeah.
So Irishmen being Irishmen decided that they were going to skirt that little law by throwing in just enough unmalted barley so that the ratio made
Still
it so that
good.
it wasn't taxable. But, you had to be careful, because if you put in too much, it wasn't good, because it's not, basically there's no soluble sugars.
yeah, the sugars
And-
don't. You don't get the yield out of it.
Exactly.
What,
so,
the other grains?
Right.
Yeah,
So
okay.
the reason you malt is it tricks the grain into starting to grow,
Sure.
and the releases enzymes to convert the starch into sugars, and the sugars are what the yeast eats to make your alcohol. But if you haven't converted the starch to sugar, there is no
Correct.
sugar to eat.
So they're skirting the taxation laws by using different grains. Okay, so they're not
Well,
using
unmalted grain.
Okay.
Yeah.
But are they being regulated at the time? When does regulation really come into effect in, in Irish
I
whiskey?
don't know that, because it's two different things. Like, honestly, all they
Yes.
were concerned about was getting their taxes.
There was no Irish Whiskey Association.
Right.
You know, I mean, 100 years ago, we were putting cocaine in our sodas and handing them to kids. So.
It could be argued that they were actually regulating it in a way by the amount of barley, because I find that interesting. They weren't doing it by the yield of whiskey that's being
right.
made. You made so many gallons. No. It's how much
they were
barley
doing
did you use?
how much malted.
Malted. That's the key though, because then they switched it up, right?
It
They switched
stopped.
it up and said, "Hold on, guys. Why don't we, guys being all the Irish whiskey makers, whatever, said, hey, let's change up the process, right? Instead of distilling this, let's do pot stills and use unmalted barley and malted barley, which is what a lot of Irish whiskey is made up of
Today,
and blends, of course, when you
Sure.
put corn and everything else. But just ultimately, it's unmalted and malted barley, or just single malt
Yeah.
Interesting.
whiskeys.
So then you fast forward a little bit, and we get to what I like to refer to as the Great Schism, right?
Yes.
So,
The great
so
schism.
Mr. Coffee and his magical still.
Aha.
So
Well, that guy.
he,
Bank.
I mean, to be honest, genius, right?
Totally genius.
Like,
Drink to that, man.
I heard somebody
casino.
compare him to the Henry Ford of drinking.
Absolutely.
And I mean, it's totally a legitimate comparison. You're talking about somebody who invented a process that reduced the labor and greatly sped up the process of making whiskey, just like Henry Ford and his assembly line did to the automobile. So
Sure.
it allowed them to continuously run the still as long as you wanted to, basically.
Just keep
that,
running
that was
that bad boy.
that was the amazing thing is you can just continue to add beer to it and it'll continue to put out whiskey. Whereas with all the pot stills, you have to add
Clean
your
it
whiskey.
and-
You got to boil out to a certain point, then you got to dump it and clean it and pour more in. I mean, it's crazy.
Well,
It
it's
is efficient.
so much more labor intensive versus his still.
Yeah.
But when he took it to the Irish whiskey makers, they didn't want anything to do with it. They thought it was,
Silly.
blasphemy, basically. Like it wasn't what they were doing. And I found that interesting when comparing what happens in the world of Scotch and a lot of whiskey worlds. The innovation is kind of stifled because we do things this way, right? And that was what the Irish whiskey producers were all about. We make our whiskey like this. So your newfangled contraption can hit the road. And so that's what he did. And he took it right over to Scotland, and the Scots were like,
Bring it.
looks
on.
good to us,
Bring it.
man. We're it's cheaper, better, faster. Let's give this thing a try. And so blended Scotch was
I'm not
invented.
sure that's their exact words, but
But blended
Maybe,
Scotch was
pretty
invented,
close.
and all of a sudden you had a whiskey that was far less expensive than their competitors in Ireland, and they're just going to run them out of business, basically.
It got you drunk just as fast.
So you go from hundreds of distilleries in Ireland down to about 2 or 3. Almost.
yeah,
I mean,
so
it was almost
the
over.
1900s, there were like 30 different distilleries, early 1900s, and just like Scotland and everything else, right? They go through the 1900s and then they get mothballed, etc. By the late 90s, there was only like 2. I think it was
Bushmills.
two
James?
pots.
it was 2 pot stills. Yeah, that's
Oh,
right.
2 pot stills.
2 pot stills distilleries. That was Redbreast and Green Spot.
Well, the other thing that happened during that period of time was Prohibition. Well, you had a lot of influx of Irish coming to the States, and they drank Irish whiskey, and Irish
Damn
whiskey
right
was
they
in demand. And then the Roaring Twenties hit, Prohibition hit, and cut
Killed
off
it.
the flow. And I didn't realize this until I started doing some research on it, but there was a lot of bootleggers that if they couldn't get Irish whiskey, they just gave you whiskey with an Irish-sounding name and told you it was Irish.
Yeah,
So,
nice.
it was
so
just distilled in Canada or
the
something.
the downside of that was that you ended up with some really subpar whiskeys being associated with the Irish whiskey label.
Right.
And so it sounds like kind of took a dent in their reputation around the
In this
around
period
the
of time,
United
is this
States.
where the different spelling comes from as well?
So interestingly enough, the Scottish are making blended Scotch, and the Irish kind of took a front to it, and so they changed the name, the spelling of whiskey, to differentiate their more quality product with what they saw as a very inferior beverage. In fact, there was a whole big legal thing that went on for a long time, and the government had to come and do like basically an inquiry into whether or not this was actually whiskey, whether it could actually be called whiskey, because of, you know, it was a different process. Like, is this actually whiskey? Should we name it something else? And so when that process got resolved and they said, yes, actually, we're going to let this be called whiskey, that was when the Irish changed and added the E.
And so we speculate that that actually is why it's spelled that way in the States as well, right? Because the United States uses an E. Did you say Japan?
No, I think Japan and Scotland are the ones that don't use the E.
I know Scotland doesn't, obviously.
Yeah. I don't remember. I think something like that. Maybe
Whiskey, Japan does not use any.
yeah.
There you go.
So,
Scotland.
but pretty much everywhere else is EY.
Okay. So we know there's a big difference between Irish whiskey and Scotch with the spelling.
Well,
but there's also other differences.
Oh, it's a lot of differences,
Right.
right? And then some of it is just based off of, and we kind of hit it a little bit, just the distillation, right? Which is a lot in your wheelhouse as far as how Scotland distills versus, I mean, similarities, right? But pot stills are different.
Yeah, well, I mean, pots. So you will not see a pot still Scotch. That is not a distinction that Scotch uses.
Okay.
I mean, what is a pot still?
Well, so pot still is just basically a big copper pot with a line arm on it to gather the whiskey. It's a single. You add your beer to it, you boil it, and distill off what you want, and you throw the rest away. So that's essentially what a pot still is. It's a single distillation. But a pot still whiskey is different because it's got in Ireland it's got a distinction between what grains you're using. So a pot still Irish whiskey is greater than 30% malted barley, greater than 30% unmalted barley, and the balance are other grains, other cereal grains.
Okay.
So it could be corn, probably not corn, mostly oats and rye and those kind of things to add flavor and body and other things to the whiskey.
Okay.
But they're only 30% malted barley, even though they're a pot still whiskey. So it's a combination of the ingredients as well as the distillation process.
But most Irish whiskeys, and I say most because I don't know if it's true if all of them are triple distilled.
Not all of them are.
It's not a requirement to be an Irish whiskey.
It kind of was the normal triple distill because they're known for being
You can say it.
Don't say
Well,
that
and
word.
lighter and cleaner.
lighter and crisper and
yeah.
cleaner. But that's because of triple. I mean, if Scotch did that, oh my gosh! I mean,
Well, some do.
Auchentoshan and
Yeah.
Springbank, Hazelburn, and Long Road, one of them does 2.5
Yeah.
times. I think Springbank is the 2.5 times.
they can get away with it though because they're whiskey.
I still haven't figured out the 2.5, but
Yeah, I knew that at one point. I need to go back and look at that.
You
but,
did.
Yeah. We talked about how they take part of the mash and put it back in and do it again. Yeah, whatever.
But so let's get into more of the what does it take to be an Irish whiskey? All right, obviously made in Ireland. Start
So I know Dr. Scotch has some information on essentially the distilled down version of what makes an Irish versus a Scotch.
all right.
Are there just hard and fast rules like Scotland has? Scotch obviously has rules. 3 years it has to age, and
And they're very similar.
okay.
They're
Well,
very similar,
and
but there
we're
are
to
few
the point now
distinctions.
where it's you know, it's a regional product. So much like Scotch, it's got to have, and bourbon and everything else, they want a distinction. You've got to follow along with these rules
Right.
because they want to protect, you know, they don't want what happened during Prohibition to happen in modern times. You know,
Right.
they want to make sure that an Irish whiskey, if you label it an Irish whiskey, it better be an Irish whiskey.
So let me do me a favor here, Drew, and scroll up just a wee bit because I know we've got Dr. Scotch in the green room.
Oh, that way you mean?
Yeah, down.
So
but
a
I
couple
don't-
of things that I think we talked about before Dr. Scotch is number one, the climate and the age.
Yeah. So when I was researching it, I guess I didn't really think that it would be that much warmer, but I guess Ireland is a lot warmer than it is up in Scotland. I guess, especially part of the mountainsides, when you get up to Orkney, I definitely can see that. But because of that, it ages faster, right? Which kind of makes sense, I guess, because the climate
yeah,
and
sure. I
environment.
mean, look at
Well,
bourbons.
yeah, that's why bourbons age
Right.
quicker because it's a warmer environment.
I see a stat up here you have on the screen. Irish has to be under 94.8% ABV before barreling. That's huge. 94.8, not proof. 94.8% ABV.
That is actually the easy trope of distilling alcohol. that when you distill, you cannot exceed
Scotch?
95%
No.
ABV.
Because say what?
So an azeotrope is a point where when you're distilling water and alcohol, you'll preferentially distill the ethanol out. But when you get up to 95%, the water will come out at the same rate, and you can never get above 95% alcohol by a single distillation process. You can overproof and then get higher, but in general, in a single distillation, you can't get above that.
Is there? I've never heard of such a requirement on Scotch.
Well, there is.
I don't know.
Depending on who you talk to, the distillation process for Scotch gets up to there, but their barreling levels are lower typically.
Yeah, their barreling lowers I thought were
typically
in the
around
upper 60s.
68%.
Yeah.
Well,
Typically.
because a lot of times they will swap barrels around to protect, the distillery in case there's a fire or a problem or whatever. But if you and I are swapping barrels, it helps if your barrel is equal to my barrel off the get-go, so we don't have to be like, well, you can hold my barrel, I'm gonna hold your barrel, but you got to give me a couple $100.
That sounds
your,
really
Your
weird.
barrel's
Does sound
not
weird.
as, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So if
I'm not
everybody's
swapping barrels with
but
you,
if
no.
everybody's got the same proof in their barrel and the barrel's the same size, then you don't have to worry
But
about it.
that's not by law. By law, it can be up to 94.8
Okay.
as well.
All right. I just saw that bullet there that from the research that was done here, and it just
Yeah, and as far as stills go, I mean, pot stills, coffee stills are legal in both countries.
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
So you want to talk about the wood? Irish whiskey no different than Scotch?
Well,
Let's talk about the age first. So because the climate is warmer in Ireland, they age faster.
Sure.
Now
So you can drink them sooner, basically.
you can well,
Is it what's
no,
the
you
age
can't drink
limit?
them sooner because the age limit on both is 3 years.
Okay.
There cannot be
But,
Irish whiskey, but it gets more barrel influence in those 3 years.
So a
Okay.
3-year-old Irish and a 3-year-old Scotch.
Typically,
That's right. That's why.
typically will be smoother and
That's why
So-
most people would say that Scotch in general is a more complex whiskey because of the longevity.
It takes a long time to
to
get
long
this
time to get the stuff out of the barrel and whatever else you're going to do to it.
So I'm picturing the map, and I'm thinking, God, Ireland's not that far
It's
from
not
Scotland.
that
So
much,
you're
yeah.
telling me the climate's different, but
It
you
is.
also have the Gulf Stream that
That's
comes
right.
up and hits Ireland,
That's
which
exactly
brings
it.
different weather. So I'll defer to
That's
that.
what they were talking about when I was researching as well. is
Okay.
The Gulf Stream comes up and really
brings
helps.
warm water.
Yeah, I mean, where a company I work for has a plant down near Cork and Kinsale, where it actually it's a summer resort on the
damn.
south end of Ireland. It's
Right.
warm and pleasant and beaches and boating and all that kind of stuff down there. Yeah.
Okay, so
The
that's
Florida of Ireland.
the Florida.
Just the tip.
Got a bunch of old people in.
Alligators?
So age is they both have a 3-year age requirement, but that 3 years is going to affect Irish whiskey more than it does Scotch, is what you're saying.
Yes.
All right, so then we're going to
More
move
rapidly,
into
yes.
what kind of woods can they use?
Interesting perspective. So Scotch, which is what we're most familiar with, requires oak wood.
Yep,
You need to age it in oak barrels.
You can finish it.
Finish it whatever you want.
whatever the
Right.
hell you want.
You can use peach wood if you want.
But
it's gotta-
don't.
But
Don't
don't do
do
it.
it.
Don't
Don't.
try.
But
Unless you're
but
bent.
you have to age it in oak barrels. In Scotland, it needs to be aged in a wood barrel.
Doesn't
wood
matter
barrel?
what type of
A
barrel.
wood barrel.
A wood barrel.
Cherry.
Wait, did you say Scotland? That's Ireland.
Ireland.
I'm sorry,
Ireland.
Yeah, you said-
meant
I was
Ireland.
gonna say, I
And
know,
so in
right.
Ireland, it's got to be in a wood barrel.
Right. Okay.
Is there another kind of barrel?
Well, there's stainless
I mean,
steel barrels or
Yeah,
iron barrels or plastic barrels or
I wouldn't age them in iron.
you don't get a whole lot of flavor out
You
of
don't get
a
much
plastic barrel.
metal,
Clay barrels?
metallic.
Yeah,
Clay.
clay.
Who does that?
Okay.
That's
So,
a hot topic.
so it could be cherry wood, it could be oak, it could be
Peach.
pine. You know, I don't know if
Ew.
I like
Oh
pine.
my God.
Give me some beach.
Last glass of whiskey you ever drank.
Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, so that's I don't know.
That's
But at the
interesting.
end of the day, whether obviously this is not, we don't know all the different bottlings that have the different woods, but the difference is that that's a pretty big difference. I mean, there's more variety in Irish whiskey as far as barreling than there is. in
Yeah, because
Scotch.
it doesn't say it has to be first use. It doesn't say it has to be a pre-finished with something else. You're up to your own.
I would be very interested to do more research just on that, only because all of I actually read a lot about the different oak species that are used,
Yeah.
and it's interesting how well that particular wood works for aging
Absolutely.
whiskey.
It is really
And
ideal.
it would be interesting to see, like, if you aged it in cherry or pecan or some like a weird wood, like what sort of interaction do you get? What sort of like negative and positive things occur with those
Yep.
different wood species?
I had a question in regards to the finishing then. So there are some strict laws in Scotland about finishing and what kinds of barrels you can use,
Not
right?
as strict as it used to
Yeah,
be.
just loosen up a wee bit.
Yeah, yeah.
You're right. But does Irish whiskey have the same kind
I
of?
don't think so, because
restrictions.
why would they have that if they're going to have? You can pick whatever wood barrel
I
you
don't.
want.
I've never seen an Irish whiskey that's been finished in a tequila barrel.
Well, it's
But
not a
now-
good idea.
I don't know how we do that
you
either.
can do it now.
I mean,
in-
they're known
in
for
Scotch.
smooth. That would be like smooth with a kick in the ass.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd. Although I will say that the tequila finished one that we had was
It
actually
wasn't
pretty
bad.
good.
The Doers,
Right.
the
The
Doers
Doers,
did a
It's
good
not
job.
bad. Yeah.
Moscow, whatever.
Yeah.
It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. How about that?
No, they did all right for 30 bucks.
All right, so that's a very interesting differentiation.
It is.
I'm fascinated by that.
And maybe if we look at comments later, we can talk through if there are some people.
Well,
that have
and we're going to get to some
information.
comments here in a
Yeah.
little bit, but we're trying to get through some
Yeah.
of the stuff. So we talked about a little bit of the history. Did we talk about distillation? We kind of did, right? We hit most of that
Yeah,
stuff.
I can use any
So
distillation.
ingredients, and we did wood, we did climate, age. Really, we're talking a little bit more geeky now, I think, as far as kind of getting into more of the. And you talked about it with like enzymes
The
or something.
enzyme, too.
Yeah, let's get down into the weeds, but we need some help for that.
Where's the doc?
Dr. Scotch might help with that.
Bring
Let's
the
go grab
doc.
him.
Oh, my bad.
Wow, hey guys, Dr. Scotch here.
Welcome,
Love
Dr.
this.
Scotch. Welcome, Dr. Scotch.
I understand you're talking about Irish whiskeys.
We are.
are,
We're
we
actually going
are.
to drink
Whiskeys.
one.
We are. What are we gonna drink?
I'm
we
gonna open
we
this
want
guy.
we got a
Why
super
not?
chat real quick, guys. Want to say hi real quick. It says just because she loves us.
Oh,
Krista.
thank
Love
you
that.
very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that.
Cheers.
Appreciate
Happy St.
that.
Patrick's
I'll
Day
take
to you.
I'll
Day
take some of
late.
whatever you're pouring.
How about one of these?
I'll take one of those. Which
Wow.
Oh,
Ardbeg?
whoa, wait. I'm not.
Yeah, it's an Ardbeg.
Oh, I'm not sure about Ardbeg right
No.
now.
Ardbeg? No, I'm gonna go with your
That's not an
Tullamore Dew.
Ardbeg, buddy.
Yeah, I'll try the Tullamore
We
Dew.
tip on that, please.
Well, it's Jameson. It's the Jameson.
Oh, the James right out of the gate.
Yeah, well, whatever,
Okay.
We're
man.
going in.
so,
big.
So this is the Jameson. What is it? What are we drinking? 15-year-old millennial bottle.
Yes.
yes, this is actually, if you stick around, you might be the lucky recipient of a sample of this guy.
Woo!
We'll
Whiskey
talk
smells
about
delicious.
it later. It's a very special bottle, though.
I'm gonna let that air up
So-
for a little bit. So what you got for us, Dr.
Doc,
Scotch?
talk to us about this whole enzyme thing, and I'm lost.
Interesting thing. So one thing that's unique about, or the difference between a Scotch and Irish, is the use of enzymes. So what you'll see here on your screen in a second, which I'm going to trust our tech guy to put
There it
up
is.
there. All right. So there's a couple things. These are some similarities and differences between Scotch and Irish whiskeys. What I want to talk about right now is the thing that I've got highlighted in yellow, and then the line right beneath it. So Scotch whiskey is made from water and malted barley, to which only whole grains of other cereals may be added. So it starts with
say
malted barley. You can add
malted
other
barley.
grains.
Make sure everybody knows what malted barley is. What's the difference between barley and malted
So
barley?
malted barley. We'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
But we'll get to that.
You're skipping ahead.
In Irish, you have a mash of malted cereals, with or without whole grains of other cereals. So malted barley is not a requirement. You need a malted cereal. So,
Malted cereal.
and then in addition to that, you have on the Scotch side, you have converted at a distillery to a fermentable substrate only with endogenous enzyme systems
What?
So stuff that's in the grain itself.
in the grain itself. Whereas
Did you really get that out of that?
with Irish, you have saccharified, which is basically converted to sugars, with enzymes, malts
Smells so
contained
good.
therein with or without natural enzymes. So what you are allowed to do with Irish whiskeys is they're not artificial, they're natural enzymes, but you supplement enzymes into the mash as opposed to using only enzymes that are in the grain itself.
Is there a limit to how much they can put in? I mean,
No.
I guess the thing that I'm picking up is Scotch, you have malted barley or malted grain, right?
That's malted barley, yeah.
And it's all malted, so you've converted all of the starch to sugars as much as you possibly can. Whereas with Irish, you've got some grains that have not been malted. If you're adding in the enzyme, does that convert some of those starches to sugars?
So the beauty of barley is it's really efficient in that malting process. It will. Let's go to the presentation. There's a slide I want to show about the
Right
grain
here?
itself. Nope, next slide.
This one?
Yeah. So
And pop it up.
when you run when you malt a grain, you've got I'm not going to go through the anatomy too much, except the endosperm is where all the sugars are and all the starches are, and you've got a hull. Now on the right there, you see what's going on there is as you add water. So on the bottom you have the H2O imbibition, where it brings water into the cell, and what that does is it starts a process where the grain will create enzymes. So it's going through DNA and RNA to create amylase. Amylase is the enzyme that actually breaks down those starches into sugars that then you can ferment. So in a normal cell or in a normal seed, when you're going to grow a plant, it converts it to starches, then to sugars, then you grow the acrospire there that creates the rootlets, and you create the spike, and it grows out of the grain. So that's kind of what's going on. These amylases are important. Barley is really good at making amylase. Now, and so that's the key. Other grains aren't as good at that.
Slackers.
In addition, what barley is also good at, it's got a strong hull that protects that acrospire as it's starting to grow.
Don't like bull.
And if the acrospire gets broken up in the malting process, the grain molds and it doesn't convert.
Mold, no good.
Mold,
No good on the
so
mold.
So barley is great about creating the enzymes and keeping those starches intact to create a good
So
brew.
it was made for distilling.
It was made for distilling.
I don't
It's
think
crazy.
they worried about this crap in the 1300s.
And so what
Do
you
you
do,
think they had a Dr. Scotch back there? Listen, we're going to get this barley.
So
This is what's going to happen.
so you get those.
The Sheldon back here in the corner. Oh, DDC.
Hey, D.
Thank you.
Hey.
Cheers.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Cheers.
So the malting process creates those enzymes. Barley's great at it. Rye's pretty good at it. Oats are really bad. They don't even malt corn. I mean, it doesn't add any value. But if you're doing a high non-malted content, so a pot still whiskey has to have greater than 30% malted barley, and the rest is whatever else grain. You might not have enough enzymes from that 30% malted barley to convert all the starches.
Right.
So what's happening in the malting process, you're not actually converting the starches there. You're creating the enzymes. Then when
make
you
it,
mash it, it will actually chew up those enzymes. So that's why you'll take the malted barley, you'll grind it up, release all those enzymes, put it in a pot of hot water, and those enzymes start chewing those starches down into sugar.
And it's the sound of
And
music.
now that's fermentable sugars, and that's the key.
So you're saying they can add enzymes in?
They can. In Irish whiskeys, you can add enzymes. That's why in Scotch, you're going to have a lot higher barley content because
They're not
you can't
adding
add any enzymes.
That's a big
the
difference.
only place you can get enzymes is from that malted barley that
So
you
basically, au natural.
No, wait. So where are you getting it if you're just going to add some? Can you just buy some of that
add.
stuff
No, yeah.
on the shelf?
You can go to Google and find enzymes all
Get
over the
out.
place. Yeah, you
I can
get
just go buy some enzymes?
brew beers.
I want you to go buy some and
Beer brewers
put it
do
in
all the
Sean's
time.
drink.
Yeah.
I'm doing it, dude. You're drinking some enzymes next week.
Why
Nope.
am I drinking
I don't-
enzymes?
'cause
No,
don't
because
want to.
your body creates amylase in your saliva. You don't need to. They start breaking down starches in your saliva. You don't need to drink it.
What happened to Sean? He got really big all of a sudden.
All right,
All the sugar.
so then those enzymes. Let's go to the next slide here, where we talk through
Right here?
there.
Okay.
So what you have on the bottom there is starch.
What?
Give me a second.
Hold on.
There it is.
You have starch, which is a great way to pack sugar. I mean, it's this long chain, and then there you have amylase and amylopectins that have all these branch chains of glucose. So if you look, each of those little hexagons is a glucose molecule. And
I see.
yeast can't break down that big long chain. It can only break down 2 and 3 glucose molecules at most. 1, 2, or 3 glucose. So what you see there on the starch molecule is 100 glucose all stuck together. But yeast can't do anything with that. So you need the enzymes. Well, I think that may be on the next one. I think. No, there. You need enzymes to start breaking that starch down. So those enzymes are breaking the chains in the middle of that chain, breaking it down into those glucose and maltose that you see in the bottom, and that is what yeast can use to make sure.
So it's like that game.
So the enzymes are the booster.
Elementary school used to hold hands and then someone would break their.
Exactly.
That's what's going on.
Red
That's
Rover.
exactly what's
Red
going on.
Rover.
You're Red Rover in this.
Red Rover.
So if you don't have
You just Red
amylase,
Rover, Dr. Scott.
you have no sugar and you have no alcohol.
Right.
Wow, this is super geeky.
Yep.
But this is true. I mean,
This is the science behind distilling.
Distillery.
Distilling.
That's a word.
You should have a drink, Dr.
I should have a
Scotch.
drink.
Yeah.
This is delicious, by the way.
Let's talk about that
It
drink
is
real
wonderful.
quick.
We should bring Andrew back. You should have a sip though before you
Go
go.
ahead.
Have a sip
You've earned
first, and then bring Andrew back. We'll bring him back in real quick. Dude, that was pretty geeky, but thank you for enlightening
So-
us.
You have to trust enzymes to create your whiskey.
Where'd you
That's
go?
kind of musky.
It is. It's good.
I wonder
You
if
don't
that,
like
that?
that, that milk's gone bad.
Andrew will like that.
You
I
can
don't
pour it
think
right
so.
here.
Bring him in there.
Before Andrew gets
All
back,
right.
pour me this.
Thanks, Dr. Scott.
All right, see y'all. Hey guys, what's going on?
It's
Good
timing
job.
right there.
Dr. Scotch coming through?
He did. He geeked out too.
See,
It
there's
was-
this little glass here.
pretty
What's
crazy.
in this?
Nothing.
crazy.
Monkey
He did-
shoulder.
He didn't like it.
Yeah, bring it to me.
You
I'll
pour
take
it back. You
But this
pass
is
it back.
good. So
No.
let me pull up the agenda again.
So there, when you get down to the geek level between Irish
That
and
was really
Scotch
geeky.
whiskey,
That was awesome.
there is some major differences going on in what they do and what's done across the aisle. Right? I mean, it's huge difference, and it explains a lot of the flavor profile differences. I mean, everybody says Irish is what more smooth.
Yep.
And that has to do with the distillation process,
And
but
the
it
grains you're
also has
using.
to do with the grains you're
Yep.
using and the ingredients you're putting in it.
Yep.
That Scotch can't do because of their regulations and their protections on their product. So that's really interesting.
So now who's a better whiskey?
Well, I think it's interesting.
Fair question.
Looking back from a
It is a good
historical
question.
perspective, you had Irish doing their thing for a long, long time, and the coffee still, anytime you introduce industrialization, it changes the game.
It
right?
does.
And so that kind of was a disruptive pattern, but now we've settled into kind of a new pattern over the past, 100 years or whatever, and Scotch is much more restrictive in the things that they allow and the
Yes.
things that you can do, versus Irish have a little bit more leeway
They
in
do.
what they can
does,
and what
yeah.
they can produce. And so I think it's interesting. It will definitely be interesting to see as things go forward if the Scotch. Well, I mean, like they just
I have a
opened
question.
up their barreling, a little bit to kind of introduce some new things. I just think it'll be interesting to see if it changes over time. I'm sure it will.
So I have a question. So obviously we're Scotch for now means we know a lot about Scotch, and I still think we just barely touched the surface of all the
Yep.
distillers out there and bottles, et cetera. But to your point, like they do have more freedom. I don't know much about Irish whiskeys, the basics. Is there more of a variety then? Are we seeing? Do you think there's a lot more of Irish than there is of Scottish?
Ironically enough, there's not as many Irish distilleries. I mean, in Ireland, you have
That's true.
one distillery making multiple labels, almost like you do here in the bourbon world, right?
Right.
And you don't see that nearly as much on the Scotch side.
No.
Usually Scotch, there's a distillery and they put out one. Now, there's a couple exceptions. Loch Lomond puts out some, right? But I think in Ireland it happens a lot more. So there probably is some variety there.
Yeah, it's interesting. They do have wider regulations, but I think the flavor breadth is not as wide as Scotch, because I think they didn't do barrel finishing as much until recently.
Yeah, that
That
makes sense.
you almost have no peated Irish whiskeys. It's allowed. There are a few. Connemara's one. We've had that.
Yeah, we've had that
But it's almost not ever done.
Right. It's just not a thing they...
Well, because
they-
their profile isn't towards that.
Well, yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
mean?
That's the thing. So it's a tradition. I would say the Scotch tradition is a broader flavor profile than the Irish tradition. Doesn't mean they can't
Okay.
do it. They just
Right.
Well,
That
let's
makes
talk
sense.
about that for a second. So let's talk about some bottles we have here. This is a decent little representation of Irish whiskeys.
Oh,
What do you
yeah.
think?
a couple.
We don't have the
reviews.
normal. Jameson is probably
Yep.
the most known Irish whiskey out there, I would think.
We
High-
have
have
one
high
Bushmills in the back.
We do have a Bushmills. This is not a normal Bushmills, but it is a Bushmills. Bushmills is out there as well, and Redbreast is probably another
So
one.
we do have a red
Yep.
breast here.
And then you've got some of the other ones like Green Spot, Red Spot, different ones like Middleton's.
Now, but when you say those,
But those are more-
those are all made almost at the same
In the
distillery.
same-
So this
yeah.
is Jameson, Middleton, Red Spot, Green Spot, Yellow Spot,
Well,
now Blue Spot.
Because they went down to basically there was a bottleneck. It was like an extinction level event of Irish distilleries.
It was.
and
That's
they
correct.
went down to just a couple left.
true.
And those couple, I think it was like Jameson, Powers,
Bushmills.
and Bushmills got together as a consortium, basically for survival purposes. But now you're starting to see a little bit more variety come into the market, and I think
Definitely.
depending on the level of interest and excitement, I mean, bourbon's huge all over the world right now. Scotch has been huge for a long time. I think there's a lot of interest in other whiskey markets, and I think Irish is taking advantage of that. I mean, you see them upping their capacity. They're putting out new products, like Blue Spot,
Yeah,
and
it's a
things like
youngin'.
that, that you haven't seen for a long time. So I think that they're really trying to gin up interest in the market, and it'll be interesting to see if that leads to new distilleries.
I
being
think
added.
they're going to start playing more and more. I mean, they have to, right? I mean, because they got a lot of celebrities even making Irish whiskeys these days, so they're starting to do
Well,
So,
I
put their
mean,
name on Irish whiskey.
whatever, right?
Yeah.
But they're starting to play just like Scotch is. They're starting to play with more of finishing and getting a little extraness because they have to, because it's not the same wheelhouse as what it used to be. So they want to. They got a lot younger audience drinking darker whiskeys these days. So let's make it interesting and be varietal.
One thing that I notice about Irish whiskeys, and I'm saying all of them, but by and large, the vast majority of them bottle at 40%. And
We didn't talk about that. Is that
you
true?
know, I mean, from my
Where are all
experience,
About 40s?
take out the special bottlings. Yes, 40, 40, 40, 40.
Well,
This is even 40. I'll bet you this one is
43.
43.
It's a little special.
But
yeah.
But they're
and-
lower. But that's kind of what Irish is about, right? It's more of that even tone, smoother,
It appears to
easier
be,
to
yeah.
drink. I mean, it seems like it.
smoother. I mean, which is going to be more approachable at 40. But I think there's a more variety in ABV in Scotland. Now, mind you, they probably have. Well, not probably. They do have a much more breadth of variety to offer as far as labels and brands, right?
Yeah.
But
Yep.
honestly, when I see a bottle of Irish, I assume right off the bat it's 40. Because
Yeah.
there's a pretty damn good chance it
That's
is.
pretty. Yeah, it's a pretty
Yeah.
good guess.
So let's talk about taste profiles. I know we're kind of getting a little bit crazy here, but I mean, is there? I mean, I feel like there's kind of a profile with Irish whiskey in a
There is.
sense, right? When you drink your Irish whiskey, like you can probably say and call it out. I think versus Scotch, for the most part.
Well,
I guess it depends on which one it is.
I don't know if head to head I could differentiate an Irish from a lighter Scotch.
That would be an interesting.
So that's
Show.
what one thing that will be interesting to see is, if one of the common adjuncts to Irish whiskey is oats, because I know oats essentially have no enzymes in them when you then typically you don't malt them either. So you need that extra enzyme to break down the sugars within and the starches within an oat. But it does add a much creamier mouthfeel, and it's, that's why you have an oatmeal stout beer, because it adds a great body to the whiskey, or to the beer that then comes over in the whiskey.
Okay, that makes sense
Yeah.
to me.
So there's a reason for it. And
But you said that oats don't have, they're not going to produce any starches, right? So sugars.
no, they will if you add the enzymes.
Okay.
They will convert
okay,
those starches to
okay,
sugars, and
okay,
they're still
okay.
fermentable.
But
how
they're
it
not.
works.
But they're not able to do it as well by themselves.
I
No,
see.
they can't. That's why you have
That's
to
why
add
you have
enzymes.
to.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense to me. All right, then. Because I was going to ask you
They're
then,
still getting good
how
yield.
does it impart in the flavor of the distillate? But
Well,
I
then,
see.
but it's got additional proteins and things in it
Right,
that are different.
okay.
So when they're making the wort, is it a longer process since they're adding the enzymes? They haven't, a lot of the grains that are in there haven't started the process of converting.
Yeah, I was looking that up today, and actually during the malting process, not that much of the sugars are converted
46.
because they kill it
That's excellent.
before. Because if it converts it all the way down to glucose, then the sprout takes it, and you don't want to do that.
Gotcha.
You want to create the enzymes and stop it, because then when you malt it, then the enzymes take their time, and that's why you steep it for several hours while the enzymes do their work.
And that's where the peat comes in.
And-
Right. So, correction. Hang on, since the writing's so small, I can't read. They have a braille right here, so let me read. Okay, that's actually 46% ABV, and it's rum cask finish. So the braille tells me that. On the
Yeah.
bottom.
You can taste it.
Well, and so what I
I
think
can't, but
is
you
going to
tell
go.
me. You tell me, boss.
That's actually pretty good.
I would say that Irish has the greatest potential to develop a broad flavor profile for Irish whiskeys than anyone
That's actually
else,
really
because
good.
they have a much wider variety ability with grains. They have a wider capability with barrels and aging, and they age faster, so you can put it in that barrel for a short amount of time and get it out to the market. So if Irish wanted to blow up and completely change their profile, they've got all the tools to do it.
Tiny little cork.
Tiny
It
little.
is
cork.
tiny
Let me
cork.
ask you this though,
It's pretty good.
because they distill 3 times and make a lighter
They don't
spirit.
always, but okay.
By and large, we'll say. Do you think that distillate will be affected more by wood? In other words, because it's been distilled more, it is a lighter spirit.
Yes.
Do you think it's more influenced by the wood than, let's say, a double distilled, heavier spirit from Scotland?
Yeah, I think a barrel would
Affect it more
The barrel would have more percentage of flavor influence. Yes.
because of its distillate.
Yeah.
Because I'm just guessing there. I would like to talk to somebody,
It's
a
interesting.
master distiller that knows a little bit more.
Because the more you distill it, the more of the heads and tails you cut out, which have all the flavor. If you're distilling pure alcohol,
it's
there's
basically
almost no
flavors.
flavor.
Right.
It's Everclear. I mean, it's moonshine.
Right. Okay. So yeah.
That's why
so
you
it's-
got to take those heads and tails to be able to. Now, that first distillate, typically from a pot, especially from a pot still, they take all of it. The only thing that they don't take is the water that's left in the pot. I mean, they really, because they want to boost
Right.
their yield.
Right, that's
it's
what
that
it's about.
second and third distillate where they start to cut out the heads and tails because they get some off flavors, the baby vomit and the some of those other
Sure.
things they don't want.
I mean, who doesn't like baby
Baby
vomit?
bomb.
I don't know.
Yeah.
This is, you like that. It's pretty good.
It's interesting, man.
It's rum.
So
rum-
that's
I'm
that
actually appreciating the Irish whiskey so far. I've not had too many
Well,
of them.
it's almost like we should do some of these.
We
think
need
so,
to
too.
get into these.
Maybe we
and-
could do an Irish whiskey for dummies review or something.
Yeah, I think we need to start exploring some
We
more
need to
stuff,
figure
guys.
that out a wee bit. I'm all for it. I honestly think Irish whiskeys are very approachable because of
They
their
are.
lightness, because of
And
their
they're similar
lower
to
ABV.
our world
Absolutely.
in a sense.
What do you think of this one?
Absolutely.
The
Yeah,
tea?
Tealing's
I will
good.
say, so I've had the Jameson 15 so far, that Tullamore Dew 12, and now the Teeling, and they are all extremely different whiskeys.
Really?
They
Very
are.
different.
They are.
Not as. I don't think the breadth of difference is quite as much as like an Isla to a
Candy
Highland,
finish.
but it's more like if you had 3 distilleries in the Highland, and they all have very different flavor profiles and unique things about them that make them very distinct. I think that's what you get.
It's an interesting concept because we already know kind of, flavor profiles, kind of, with our distilleries in Scotland, but I don't know anything over here. And I'm wondering, is that kind of representation of Teeling versus the
I don't know,
normals?
because that's a rum finish. I think that one's different. This literally said this is a
But-
small batch rum.
It's
rum
super
finish.
sweet.
But the
It
mouthfeel,
is
like the
super
Tullamore Dew had more of a creaminess about it.
But they're all
And whereas the Teeling is almost a watery finish, but it's got the sweetness of the rum up front, and it's very interesting.
Yeah, it
So-
definitely tastes like a rum.
So, but when you picture the two islands next to each other, right? So, in Scotland, you had distilleries all over the island, and there are regions, and those regions, some of
they're
our
kind of
Very
they're the
good,
profile
very-
pieces.
Ireland does not have that going on. As a
No.
matter of fact, when you look at where the few distilleries are in Ireland, one's way up north in Northern Ireland, okay? Bushmills is way up there. Jameson's way down on the other side. And that's really kind of what you get. Now,
Interesting.
you're getting different
Yeah,
weather than I would expect.
there aren't whiskey regions in Ireland.
Right.
Not that we know of, at least.
That we know of, yeah.
Well, I think we need to dig into that a little bit more. We should probably take a trip over there and ask.
I think we should.
I like the way you think.
I'm all for it. I love the Emerald Isle.
So is it fair to say, well, I know the answer to this, that an Ardbeg versus, I don't know, a red breast?
Anything.
Oh my God!
Anything.
Anything.
not fair.
That's
Any
not
of
even
that.
fair. How about a Glenfiddich 14 against an Iron? What's the major differences between those two?
I think I'd take that red breast 12 all day and every day. I'm just saying from looking at the two.
Mash bill
Um,
would be one.
Yeah.
They're both aged, obviously. One's 2 years older than the other. One is bourbon finished. I don't know if Redbreast 12 has a... Yeah, it says sherry undertones, so I've got to assume that spends time,
Partially finished, at least, yeah.
yeah, at least finished. And it's 40. What's the Glenfiddich? 40? It's got to be.
Sherry undertones.
So
As in under.
There's no different way to drink
43.
Irish whiskeys, right? I mean, they neat and rocks. Is there any? I mean,
Water, yeah.
There is another way, and it's actually called a car bomb.
oh, that's right,
What?
car bomb.
Bum, bum, bum. We could experiment with that. We could demonstrate. We could show
You know
our
when we use
viewers
these good Irish
what an
whiskeys
Irish
for that.
car bomb is. We actually have a viewer, a subscriber, a patron, a very good friend who would probably be able to demonstrate it
I
much
think he
better
does
than
one a week.
we. A
At
week?
least.
I wish we had him on.
I wish we had him.
Just
We
remote him in.
he would drop and go.
Come on in, do it.
But I mean,
But there's
just
a
making
difference
fun.
between
There is.
these two.
Absolutely,
I mean,
there's
for
a
sure.
difference
I mean,
between.
So I guess going
like-
back to the original topic, and then we're going to start hitting comments and talk about the giveaway. But the difference between Irish and Scotch whiskey is a lot, actually. There's quite a bit going on, right? It's got unique profiles to them both. But I would think it goes back to kind of not just the history, but really the distillation, the ingredients, how it's distilled, how it's matured, the length of maturity, and then what am I missing? Enzymes. I mean, that's a big thing too.
Well, my view, I think the reason the mash bills are different, I think, is because of what you're talking about, the taxman. I don't think the Scottish taxman ever.
Well, because they went off of
But I got a
alcohol
question.
and not the grain. So it didn't matter what you were distilling, so they used the best grain possible for their distillate.
Does
Exactly.
Irish whiskey use E150?
Yes, they can use E150 and water. They're both Scotch and Irish are allowed to use E150A and water to adjust the color.
I
and-
can't say I've ever paid attention or seen an Irish bottle that says natural color.
Yeah,
Possible.
I don't know.
I
Why don't
really
you try some of the special?
I will. I'm going
Likes.
to finish this off, but before we get done with this, I want you. I'm asking you to do this because I know I'm not going to be able to taste the difference. Actually, all three of you can. I want you guys to marry these two up. These are both same distillery.
Tullamore Dew.
One is Oloroso finish. One is their
It
straight.
would be interesting to
So,
see if there's
tell me,
a big
Can first of all,
foundation.
Can you taste the foundation and can you taste
All right.
the difference? I know I'm not going to. I'm getting a little bit. My flavors, my taste is coming back slowly but surely, but it's definitely not going to be able to pick out that difference. So I want to try that
All right,
tealing
so
though,
I'm gonna
especially
pour,
with you
I'm
said
gonna pour a
mouthfeel.
glass with the Olo. I guess I need to mark this somehow because they're basically the same color.
I think it's
Use
gonna
a
be
different
pretty
glass.
obvious.
Use a small one.
For
the regular.
Well, I went at the same. I went to all the same.
Oh, you're gonna.
we gotta
we're
stick
gonna
with
use
it.
these two.
Olo will be the red one.
So I think we are close enough to at least while you guys are pouring.
Sure.
Sean, why don't you dive into these awesome.
Can you scroll up a little bit, or
Yeah.
All
What do we got? My gosh,
we
man.
got a lot of people have been talking, so
So let's see if
Streamlabs
there's,
is look
see if
at
there's
this.
any. Is there any
Well, look at
questions
that.
on here?
I don't know if
It's
we've
a
got any
non-age.
questions.
The Irish whiskey.
Oh, there's somebody who
was,
cracked open that 15-year-old Millennium Edition.
Wait,
Cracked it
shut
on his
up.
wedding day.
What? Nobody has that, except
He did on his
Wow,
wedding
dude,
day.
Let me
Good
tell
for
you,
you.
that is a wonderful bottle. I hope you still have a little bit left. If you didn't, I hope you enjoyed every last drop. Good for you.
Yeah, that's very
So, Eric Waite said that Ireland is now making a comeback with 30-plus distilleries, but most are fairly new. And that's
I like
kind
that.
of
That
what I'm
sounds about
hearing
right.
as
that
well.
makes me happy. I think we should open one.
I'm down with that.
There's an
I,
opportunity, boys.
Let's do it.
And I love whiskey regions like that. And I mean, you know, kind of the whole history of whiskey is kind of that boom and bust cycle. And, you know, regions come and go, in and out of favor. just like different alcohol types come in and out of favor.
Right.
So, you want to
Yeah.
give me a glass, Andy? I like the.
I actually am really.
That's
It
great.
makes me
Oh,
happy
we're
to
just
hear
doing
some of
those?
these
I don't
comments
care.
about the distilleries in
We're all-
Ireland
we're all
popping back up. I would love
vaccinated.
nothing more than to see Ireland have as many, or at least percentage-wise to size of distilleries too. It deserves it. You know, there could be a vast variety of whiskeys coming out of Ireland if you just had more competition. Thanks to Bushmills and Jameson and Powers for coming together and saving it and keeping it alive and going.
They saved an industry.
But there's opportunity there for some really interesting, good Irish whiskey to start coming back around.
The nose between these two is amazingly different.
Oh, totally.
I
well,
expect
and
that.
so
I expect
interesting.
that.
This Tullamore triple distilled is non-aged, non-finished, or at least non-descriptive finish.
Right, this is their core.
Screw top.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean it's.
This is the 12-year-old.
Where did you get this from? What store?
I
Same
can-
place that you did.
I can totally taste
Yeah.
the similarity between.
You
the
can
two.
taste the
Oh,
foundation
yeah.
then.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Did
Really?
you try 'em?
No,
I would say neither of them has a great
That's a little cork.
a great finish. I'd say
know-
the Olo's better,
Well,
but
that's
I-
good nose, but
The Oloroso nose is heads and tails better.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed both of them. Like
I
would
have
say
not
they
had
were
a Scotch.
fine.
I'm sorry. I have not had an Irish whiskey yet that has had the nose where I'm like, holy crap, there's a lot going on. It feels like they're all very light and
Delicate.
Delicate is a good word. Yes.
That Oloroso nose right there has a little bit
This
more
is
going
this
on.
is the
Yeah,
Oloroso.
it's a
But
right
I
there.
would
can
say I'm always shocked when I take a sip. Like this Tullamore Dew, the just standard issue. The nose isn't great at all. It actually it smells
the
a little
noses
a little like cereal grains.
Yeah.
It didn't have a very good nose, but when you take a sip, it's actually very pleasant. I mean, it's
got a better mouthfeel than I was
it's a
expecting.
little bit of lemon and citrus and some light
Smells
honeysuckle
almost burnt,
and
almost.
so I mean it's got a very pleasant flavor profile. It's enjoyable, but I don't get any of the stuff that I get on the palate on the nose. It's very
Yeah.
it's almost closed off, I guess.
Ironically enough, I get the ABV difference. I honestly,
That's-
I get an ABV burn on the Teeling.
Not great.
Really?
But it's just like drinking watered honey.
Now, my brother-in-law absolutely. This is his favorite Irish whiskey.
It's not
Tullamore Dew.
bad.
This
It's-
one right here.
It's not bad, but there's not a lot of flavor going on.
I don't
Okay.
mind it. It's been a while since I've had it, and I
It's very.
I don't mind it.
It's like nothing.
That's what Irish whiskey's known for, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
This smells like gum, fruit gum or something.
There's something in the mid palate of that is unique. I need to go through it again.
I really think it's because of the grain bill
gotta be.
of the whiskey. Because it's got a creaminess to it a little bit, and it's
who produces Tullamore Dew? Do you know? Is this out of Jameson? Or is this? I don't.
This feels
I can't even read.
okay.
it
This
anymore.
is like the Oloroso is like. You're right. It's the same foundation with a little squirt of that water flavoring stuff. Like grape.
Like Mio.
Oh, jeez,
Mio.
oh, gee.
That's what it tastes like. I mean, it doesn't taste like Oloroso that I know Oloroso. It tastes like artificial flavoring.
Ah, that's true.
You know what I'm saying? It's not. I mean, poor.
It's not melded well.
Like this is Oloroso.
Oh,
That's the difference.
Well, so and you mentioned the one peated Irish whiskey that we've had, Connemara, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I remember that bottle was down here, and
That was
none of y'all would drink it.
terrible.
we drank it.
You and I drank it.
Oh,
Damn right we
terrible.
did. Killed that bottle.
It was
Like
fine,
any
man.
other bottle that comes on this
Oh.
bar.
Tom R's got the right idea.
Uh-oh. Like he
Raffle.
done said raffle. Tom
Oh.
R wants to see this happen.
all right,
we might-
let me get going. He's
Yeah,
ready.
we only got 7 minutes, so we might have
So
to
what
take
are we
a
giving
little
away?
past 11. So let's talk about just what this is. So first of all, let me back up before we even get to that, as Drew's getting this set up. Tom actually gifted us 2 bottles many, many moons ago, right? This is way back early in Scotch for Dummies, and
Yep.
he had come down to visit and wanted to see the bar.
Came down to the bar.
And he brought 2 gifts with him, and we still have them. That's how good
Barely.
they are.
You can see how empty that is. Yeah.
This Bushmills Millennium Malt was distilled in 75, and it was, is that what he said?
Yeah,
distilled in 75
and bottled for the millennium.
and bottled for Millennium. To this day, This is my wife's favorite. She had a sample. This is as good as it gets in her world. This is an incredible whiskey. Great Bushmills. He also gave us another Millennium bottle.
Yep.
Jameson did something very similar and bottled this 15-year-old for the Millennium, and it is bottled at 40%. 15-year-old. And it is another exceptional.
It's very, very good.
It's you're not going to find it. It's one and done.
My father, who's a big Irish whiskey guy, he really likes that.
Yeah,
bottle.
exactly. So
he likes it.
we are going to raffle off a sample of this. The Owls can deliver
is
it to pretty much anywhere. Jameson 15 Millennium bottle, pure pot still, limited edition,
Keep
triple
typing.
distilled.
I can't get James 15.
There you go.
That works enough, right?
That-
Millennium.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
Sure.
so type Millennium because it's not just a normal
Yeah, it's not
Jameson
just a
15.
Jameson 15.
It was bottled in 2000,
Well,
2000, wasn't it?
the people that are on here are going to
No.
be the only ones who have a chance.
Right. They know
So-
it.
I smell my.
So we have enough of this one
MILL,
left over to be able
IN.
to give away a sample. So for those of you that are still at the show,
US.
at 55 minutes
There
in,
you go.
make sure you type raffle exclamation point.
Exclamation point right.
Exclamation
Raffle.
point
I'm gonna make
raffle.
this. Oh, I got just a timer for it. It's gonna be too long.
To get in on this.
Yeah, like a 5-minute raffle.
If you happen to win it, you're going to be happy. Trust me, it's delicious.
Let's do it.
And we actually owe
Just
a
initiate.
hearty cheers and thank you and happy St. Patrick's Day to Tom for
Give it a second, Tom. You're too soon. Wait for the bot to start it.
Tom. You gave us these bottles a long time ago. I'm thrilled that we still have them, but
Well,
I
what
think
else we
one's
got here?
dying tonight, and the other's getting a sample sent out.
All right, now you can. Okay.
go forth
Red
and
breast.
Alejandro's already in there too.
Of course he is.
Yeah.
Exclamation mark raffle.
Do it up.
So look, at the
Can't
end
win
of the
if
day,
you don't
guys,
play.
I think we definitely need to get more into the Irish whiskey and find out more
I do
about
too.
who they are,
I
what
do
they are.
too.
I mean, obviously we just covered the history, the flyby, but
Something else too, by the way, we should get into.
Oh.
How about some bourbon?
some bourbon.
Well,
This
that's
isn't
a
even
rye.
bourbon,
That's a rye, but
Balcones rye.
it's an entry level.
Balcones rye.
It'll be fun, man.
Texas,
be
Texas,
fun.
Zach
Texas
will
rye
like that.
whiskey.
But no, I think you're going to start seeing a little bit more of a
Sharing
variety
is
from
caring,
us
Tom.
too to understand because I'm ready to start learning some more stuff.
Well, and honestly, I mean, to bring it back home to Scotch for Dummies, it's going to help us on our journey in Scotch to better understand
Appreciate.
whiskey from a bigger picture.
Yep.
What's going on outside of our world, and it'll help us appreciate our world more.
Which one?
What do you
Red
got?
breast. That's good. I just put
Oh, Red Breast 12?
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
good.
Yeah,
That's really
that's a
good.
great bottle.
Yeah, you can't
Really
go
good.
wrong with that. There's
Wow.
some diehard Red Breast friends out there.
Yeah,
Super
It's
diehard.
delicious.
And, I mean, my father, he's a huge redbreast guy.
that's good. That's an everyday drinker right there. That's
Oh,
like
for sure.
Yeah. Very approachable, too, for someone who's not a whiskey fan.
malty.
That can actually come into it,
What's
get
the price?
something
What's
out
the
of it.
price point on that?
$45?
Yeah, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
I'm taking a guess.
I think it's like
do you
40.
remember what the Tullamore Dew 12?
So this
old-
Tullamore Dew 12, this is a limited edition type thing, though. This was $54 today.
Oh wow.
Now this, the Tullamore Dew regular
That's
green label
28.
is it's 20.
So it's
Yeah.
half the
$30.
price.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna tell you right now, this is when you get your taste back, you're not gonna appreciate it.
Right.
No.
It's bad
It's not great. It's
It's
not
just-
horrible, but it tastes
compared
artificial.
to this.
This is much better.
You like the
No,
green?
no,
I think it's much better. Yeah, because the sugary in this one throws me off.
I had to try it. I'll be honest with you. You're absolutely right. That's why I bought it, because I was like, I got to get something for the show tonight, and I'm like, Oloroso.
But it's not the what
I like
Oloroso
it.
you're
Okay.
thinking of.
I didn't mind it.
Yeah.
I thought it was okay. But I think the undertones description is a good way to put it. It's not a sherry bomb.
Right.
It's got a hint, a sprinkle of
Spent
sherry.
bourbon barrels. That's what I'm tasting in
And
that one.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so you get a little bit of oak, but a little bit of bourbon influence, vanillas, honey, You get
No pine though.
So
fine.
as these guys are doing the raffle, how much time do we have left on the raffle?
About
Hopefully,
40 minutes.
Okay.
Not much.
I do want to,
2 minutes.
let's wrap up a little bit about what's going on. April 11. April 11 is our big conversion day, right? So
what
April
we're saying.
11 is our first live on a Sunday. So that's when we make the move from Thursday nights to Sunday night, Sunday afternoons, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our first guest that's going to be on the show is from Scotland. She's a master distiller over there.
That's enough. Don't say
I'm
anymore.
going to reserve it and leave it at that. But
It's a secret.
we've got a lot of good things going on. The whole format of the show is gonna change a little bit, and we're gonna up the production value of it. We're gonna actually hopefully have some more guests from Europe and get those folks involved in the conversation. Not that you guys need help with the conversation, but anyway, I want to make sure everyone knows about that. We're going to maintain Thursday nights.
Yep.
For our patrons.
And for us.
And for
And
us.
for us.
And let's switch that. We're going to maintain Thursday nights for us and our patrons, because
Patrons are
y'all-
going to join in, yeah.
Yeah, we're doing live shows and special game shows. They're going to be throwing darts with us, watching movies with us on Thursday nights. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to get drunk on Thursday nights with them.
Amen.
But
Are
on
we?
Sunday, yeah,
We
hell
don't get
yeah.
drunk on
But on
Thursday.
Sunday
But
we got
Sundays is going to be more professional.
Professional.
We're upping our game. We're not going to just be a review channel. We're going to get more innovative. We're going to get more informative. We're going to get
Right.
more educational.
a little more in depth.
More in depth. And we're growing. We're not going to be just doing Scotch.
Right. We're going to start
What?
stretching ourselves out into American bourbon, maybe Japanese, obviously some Irish.
The
Who
journey's
knows where
expanding and going forward.
we go? And we don't know what it's going to spawn and what it's going to create. But nevertheless, will you have a live on Thursday the 8th, or will the first be on live?
I would say the first is the last live show on Thursday because
Someone just
We're-
made a command decision.
well
I like
because
that idea.
the
We need to
Thursday of the 8th
is
is a planning session
Right.
for the patrons.
Yeah.
So if you're not a patron, you
Right,
might want to be
so
one.
those Thursday nights, we're going to be cracking bottles. We're going to let our hair down a little bit more, have some fun, but we're also going to use it more of a planning session towards about a month out on our live shows. In other words, patrons, you're steering the ship. Where do you want to see us go? Do you want to see a Japanese whiskey? All right, let's do it's giving you guys a little more creative control over the content on the Sunday lives. And we'll actually share some of the guests and what we have going on in the background. Heck, we might even hand one of you guys the keys and let you drive a show if that's what you really want to do. That's always open for
That's right, Tom. It is.
available. But you guys got to step up for it. So anyway, go Big Ten.
We'll let that one for you, Eric. But let's go ahead
Oh
and do
my gosh.
our winner, guys. You ready?
Yeah.
What's the winner getting again?
To Jameson 15 Millennial Bottle. Sample of.
The winner is
Steven
Rogers.
Stephen Rogers, speak
welcome,
up now.
welcome.
That should
There
be
you go, man.
excellent.
Stephen
I
Rogers.
believe he's a patron.
Yep.
Stephen Rogers,
Yep.
if you're a patron, we already have your email address, but why don't you email us?
Email us so he remembers to ship it to you.
Yes. Email us
What?
at scotchfordummies@gmail.com with an address that an
I like
owl
this a lot.
can drop the sample off to you.
I did not.
Congratulations, Stephen. That's exciting. I'm glad we're giving a sample of this away.
Yep.
So Irish whiskey. First of all,
Fun night.
happy
Good-
St.
good
Patrick's
stuff.
Day, boys.
Yeah.
Honestly, it was a cruddy one because we didn't get out and just go get pissed.
I'm not wearing green, but whatever.
You kind of are.
But
Sort of green.
nevertheless, I think it was probably a cruddy St. Patrick's Day for many people because of the current situation. So I'm not going to down about that. I think this was an awesome topic. I learned a shit
Yep.
ton, to be honest with you.
I did too.
And
It's
there's a
crazy.
lot more to go.
Yeah, we've had Steven on. He's been on the Zoom calls and stuff.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
I'm excited for
yeah.
it.
Oh yeah.
So that's a great one, man. Very cool.
Anyway, we have a patron post show to shoot up. What you got
That's
today?
nice.
Yeah, nice.
We're gonna take a zebra down on the post show.
Yeah, we
I
are.
like
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah,
idea.
we are.
All right, gentlemen. Fun show.
Hey,
I
everyone.
learned a lot. I'm actually looking forward to getting into more Irish, maybe even some bourbon and everything else. So,
Did I see a molecule?
molecule. Oh, you think right there?
What? What's that?
Oh
Anyway,
my gosh! Don't get him started.
Squirrel! Squirrel!
Anyway, cheers! Great show tonight. Thanks for tuning in and hanging out with us for an hour. Hope you guys learned a little bit about Irish, guys.
We'll see you next time.
Cheers.
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 Lunchbox.